Pnawn da bawb, a chroeso i chi i gyd yma ar gyfer y digwyddiad arbennig hwn heddiw yma. Warm welcome to this event to you all, whether you're here or joining us online as well. The In Focus series of events explores the themes relating to the No Welsh Art exhibition. Inspired by a group of paintings belonging to the art historian Peter Lord, who is here with us today, though I can't see him just at the moment. Oh yeah, there we are. John Barnie responded by writing his book of poetry, Afterlives. Was it a booklet? No, it's a volume. Today John will share and discuss some of the poems, demonstrating how images can inspire words and bringing to them another voice. As you probably know, John Barnie is from Abergavenny. He was educated there at King Henry VIII Grammar School and at Birmingham University. From 1969 to 1982, he taught at Copenhagen University before returning to Wales to work for Planet, the Welsh internationalist, between 1985 and 2006. He has published 20 collections of poetry to date, as well as fiction, memoirs, and a book on the blues in Welsh. The essay collection, The King of Ashes, was awarded a Welsh Arts Council Prize for Literature in 1990, and the poetry collection Trouble in Heaven was longlisted for the award in 2008. Throughout 2016, he was one of 3 poets in residence at Oxford University's Museum of Natural History. He has read in Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Ireland, Denmark and Lithuania, as well as Guyana, Canada, the United States, England, and has been translated into Italian, Danish and Estonian. John's most recent collections of poetry are Dunes of Cwm Rheidol and Ice, a novel in verse. So would you please give John a very warm welcome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be able to hold this event in the gallery with all the paintings around us, including this one and the one above the little girl, which I'll be talking about later. As Dan said, I came to Aberystwyth in 1985 to work for Planet, and I've known Peter for all these years, for 4 decades. And I've watched his collection slowly grow and grow in his cottage, Gelli Fach, and in Cwm Rheidol. And watched it grow until every wall in the cottage was covered with paintings. So he built a custom-built extension gallery, and he soon filled that up as well. And some of these paintings I've known for many, many years and admired. And it suddenly came to me that I must write a series of poems about some of these pictures. And I knew the poems would be short and they would have a facing image of the relevant painting. And I knew that they shouldn't be just descriptions in words as far as possible of the paintings, because what's the point of trying to do that when the painter has expressed it so marvelously in paint? When a poet publishes a collection, or when an artist exhibits and sells his or her paintings, the works become something else. They're no longer yours, in my opinion. I don't care what copyright laws say. They've gone out into the world and they will be interpreted in many ways by many different people, and often in ways that the artist or the painter had absolutely no idea that such inferences could be drawn from them. So that's why I've called the book Afterlives, because I'm writing about the afterlives of these paintings. I'm giving my own interpretation of them. And this is particularly easy with portraits where we don't even know the name of the sitter. And I'll begin with this stunning in its way painting by William Jones Chapman, Lady with a Flowered Bonnet. We don't know who she is. I think it's a sort of endearing painting in a way. She's obviously new money. You know, there's plenty of money sloshing around here. Look at that beautiful gold and whatever it is, pendant on her breast there. But although they got money, it's new money, and she doesn't quite know how to spend it to effect. So she plasters it all on, and it looks like she's a sort of badly overdressed Christmas tree. But I like her. She's having a portrait done. It's a big event for her. It's her day, and here she is. So, nouveau and riche. I'm ready, and here comes the painter upstairs with paint pot and brushes. I did wonder plumes, but Mr. T said no, I'm best set off with flowers, and display that brooch with rubies and gold. He said the bodice was a French knight's armour, but that was his joke. It's soft as feather pillows. I don't like the shine on my nose, but the lace is very good. I must ask the ladies round to tea. Oh yes, that's me. Now, how many sugars would you like? In a stark contrast, this painting by Morris Soczewski, painted when he was 19, he came to the mining valleys and did a number of very expressive paintings. In this one, there's a out-of-work miner and his wife coming down off the slag heaps with a burden of small coal which they've picked from amongst the waste stone. He's bearing the weight of it, but she's helping, pushing up on the load with her left arm. And you don't notice at first, but he's got his arm around her, sort of protecting her. It's a portrait of, not just of poverty and endurance, but it's a portrait of intimate affection as well, it seems to me. But what stands out in the picture, of course, is the woman's eyes, with those staring whites and the sort of glassy blue of her eyes. He looks tired, he looks exhausted, but she looks defiant and perhaps even full of hatred for we, the people, the more affluent people who are looking at this picture, looking at their poverty and their desperate struggle. There's reference in it to nutty slack. Is there anybody who doesn't know what nutty slack is? Yeah. Well, nutty slack, in the days of coal fires, if you're going, you light it at breakfast. If you're going out afterwards, you get a mix, several shovelfuls of a mix of tiny coal, like sort of granules, gravel, and coal dust, and you would put several shovels of that on the fire. It would create an airtight dome which would seal the fire in. It wouldn't stifle it, but it would seal it in. And when you came back several hours later, it'd be a stiff dome. You could poke it with a poker and add a few more pieces of coal, and the fire would flare up again. So, you, the outsider. Churchill's in his pub, swapping Boer War stories. The police are all Tories. Everyone knows that. Picking nutty slack off tips, the poor man's pyramids. What are you staring at? Whose coal shed has the biggest lumps, veneered with fool's gold or pressed with fossil ferns? Coal is heavy, life a hardship, sliding over rustling slag to home. What's the anger in the woman's eyes as it follows you round the room? Oh, wrong one. Hugh Hughes, an early painting by Hugh Hughes of Richard Ellis, solicitor. It's a simple painting, but it's of a man who clearly knows his own worth. He's a big fish in a small pond, the solicitor of a town who everybody respects. Solid. I've a long nose to look down. I never make jokes, but I have a name, Ellis Cyfreithiwr, the man to go to, opening a door on my brown painted room, sparse as a vestry. And me looking up, casually holding a thumb where I'm mentioned in the Gazette. Poor Taff. I wish, by the way, there's a marvellous painting, some of you must have seen it already, an inn sign which Peter acquired which has H. Davis at the bottom and Cymro am byth up above. And H. Davis is a solid man. You wouldn't call him poor Taff. He'd get off his goat and give you a good drubbing. But this poor Taff, an English satire on Welshness or Welsh pretensions. Taff trying to look the gentleman with a red nose. He hadn't got a sword, he's got a leek. And he's got a red herring tucked under the straps of his saddle and a leek cockade. The goat looks kind of angry, but Taff looks put upon, sad, sort of downtrodden. In the poem that accompanies this, there's a quote from, I think, the Daily Mail about Boris Johnson during his disastrous and shameful premiership. And there's also a reference, I began to wonder if Taffy rides a goat, what does John Bull ride? What does the Englishman ride? So, Taffy trots to London. 97 miles, so still a way to go, with a leek cockade and a leek sword, and stink from the goat, let it be known, driving him from town to town. On your goat, Taff. The goat looks angry, and Taffy looks hurt. But that's the English view. Boris lays down law to EU. These foreign Johnnies have got to be told. As it was, so it is now. But wait a minute. What does the Englishman ride, if not a Berkshire pig? This is working quite well. Clarence Waite's God's Acre, a small, poor church way out in the sticks. The audience emerging from the Lich Gate, dispersing home. What was the sermon about? Here they come, crowding through the Lich Gate, 9 talking to the little girl who is glad to leave God's Acre, where tombstones lean toward each other and the dead sleep on. The black dog, by the way, isn't an omen. He just came nosing about at the sound of voices. Home now to a roast dinner across the fields. The father permitted a jest as he carves the meat. You have to peer to see this through thick cracking varnish, like Capel Celyn when the lake evaporates, the village laid bare in a crazy paving of mud. This is actually, it might seem perverse, but this is my favorite painting in Peter's collection. John Roberts was 16 when he did this, and it's obviously based on an inn sign, and Peter's found out that there was an inn called the Marquis of Anglesey in Carnarvon at the time. But this image has a very interesting cultural background, what Marxist historians used to call ascending and descending cultural models, because he painted a copy of the ensign, but whoever did the ensign based it on a very popular patriotic print published in London, and the print itself was based on an academic heroic painting of the Marquis at the Battle of Waterloo. That painting is obviously very accomplished, but if you walk around English country houses, you'll see dozens like it, and you'll pass underneath them without barely thinking about them. As you might probably know, the Marquis at the very end of the Battle of Waterloo was on his horse side by side with Wellington when almost one of the last shots from the battle, it may have been a grape shot, it may have been a cannonball, the story changes, shattered his leg, and the Marquis is supposed to have looked down and said, "By God, sir, I've lost my leg." And Wellington looks over and says, "By God, sir, so you have." I'd like to think it's true. It ought to be true, even if it isn't. I imagine the Marquis, in later life now, an old man in the pub with his wooden leg and his tankard of ale, buttonholing anyone he can find, anyone who hasn't been to the pub before, to tell his stories about his daring do in his youth. So he's become the pub bore. "By God, sir, never been in a cavalry charge? Let me tell you how it's done. First the bugler Stiggles trot, then canter, until he raised the inverted sabre. Brigade, charge! Damn me, sir, nothing finer. Thunder of hooves, yelling of men, white smoke from enemy cannon, pock and sack as grape shot finds a home. Men pitching, horses screaming. But on you go, until by God see you're in among them, cutting left and right. Damn me, slashed an arm clean off at Waterloo. I was young then, by God. Reduced now to hanging on a tavern wall. But damn me, sir, I've lived. I've lived." My wife Helen disagrees with me about the portrait of Humphrey Owen here. She thinks he looks a much nicer person than I interpret him here. The poem is called Razor. He's sharp, make no mistake, keeps himself lean. I wouldn't ask for a kind word or a loan. The backs of his hands are veined, they're sagging under the chin. Women say he has a brown smile, or used to. It's sour apple time now, and he dresses in black. 2 great wings of eyebrows, ready to take flight. This is another of my favorites, and we indeed have it in view over there. When Peter bought it, it was in a terrible condition. You wouldn't think it could possibly be restored, but Peter has a brilliant restorer, Howard Macro, who brought it back to full beauty of it, what it had been originally. I like the little smile on her lips which are also sort of rosebuds, a smile which is gentle but also slightly mischievous, perhaps. You feel sure once this is over she's going to run off and play hide and seek in the garden. Rosebud. Little rosebud girl, how sentimentally sweet you are. The double rose of life held between finger and thumb because of the thorns. Rose her sash, rose her buckled shoes. May she never grow up, never lose her smile. Because she did grow up, and Peter tells me she lived to a ripe old age, so I hope her old age was as happy as I'm sure her childhood was. Oh, yeah. This is another painting which, in its execution, you can, if you like, call naive. Evan Hugh Parry's painting of Charles Haddon Spurgeon preaching in one of the great London chapels in the 1880s. It gives you a sense, I think, of the power of these preachers preaching to hundreds of people in a vast chapel. What were they thinking, these great preachers? What were they thinking when they were preaching to all these people, the great man up there, high above them? He thinks while he preaches. I look around at these wooden souls. How many will be saved when Jesus comes reaping? Not many, I fear. The Lord's granary is capacious, but few sheaves will be gathered. So much rotten corn left standing in the fields. And when I am called, what can I say before the mercy seat? You are dead, Lord, but I heard you speak. I lifted the burden of this great chapel on my shoulders. Yet I was a poor farmer. My scythe was too blunt. I sheared too near the skin. All these doubts I raised with myself in the long coffin nights. I seem a grand man to them, one of the elect. Yet no vessel can contain my questioning and fear. The next is the man, unfortunately, isn't in the exhibition, but the lady is around here somewhere. I've asked Peter to put the two together because they make a very interesting contrast, I think. Compared to the first lady we saw, this woman knows how to dress. She's elegant, very refined. She's very much aware of her beauty. And the man, her husband, what do we make of him? Dressed in black and maroon. And she has a dawn coming up by the side of her, while he has a sunset to his left. They make a rather odd couple in my eyes. So the woman first, stunning. Do you like my pendant earrings? Solid gold, of course. And my shining black crimped hair, which took hours. You must have patience to be beautiful. And the blue satin of my dress and my cool shoulders, warning you away from my lips. And then her husband, eclipsed. Why dressed in maroon and woolly black, with a somber red sky to his left? The face kind, but weak, so his fireside Napoleonic stance fails to convince. I think it's the wife's chill radiance, who has chosen dawn beyond the pillar to illuminate her alabaster shoulders. How can he bear to contemplate her turned away indifference? He has that smile. He is loving to their child. This is another Hugh Hughes painting, Buch Llanberis. It's, I think I'm right, Peter, the largest painting he did, yeah. It's over there, a commission. What's striking about it for me is first of all, you see the sky, this big V of light, and then the rocky walls of the bwlch cascading down to the road. And only then do you begin to look closely at the tiny figures on the road who are at the center of the painting, I think. There's a coach, maybe a lady's coach. There's a woman in front of that watching a dog chasing sheep over a stone wall. And far, far back, there's another figure who might be another woman, slowly, slowly making her way through the path. A bwlch. The dog barked and the sheep jumped over the wall. Nursery rhymes for babes. But in this painting, the focus is the delirium of standing still, like the man who watches and the man traveling far behind, who will never catch up with the lady's coach, if that is what it is. Pulled by a horse, born to slavery. Except we don't call it that, and didn't then. Humans can be slaves, but the animals we strap to coaches, whipped to carts before carts, are only the semi-sentient precursors of the triumph of lorries and cars. It's another South Wales painting by Evan Walters, Courting. I know from Peter that Evan Walters had a specific iconography in mind with this picture, but I've given it a different one. There on the left, there's the blackened miner and his girlfriend apparently asleep in his lap, the man exhausted from a shift. And on the right, little boy blue with his bow and arrow. But the center of the painting, for me, is that patch of light down between the trees with a house, and that silhouette of a man is clearly a man with a cap. He's a kind of voyeur. He's watching the scene. He's watching this couple. He knows what they're up to. The boy isn't, I think I am right in saying, according to Evan Walters, was meant to be a symbol for Eros, but to me he's just a lad with a homemade bow and arrow. When I was growing up in Abergavenny, all boys you made your own bows and arrows, and you once up on the derry that went the hills overlooking Abergavenny, I was up there and I did just that, and then went to retrieve it in the bracken, only to find it had landed within about 4 feet of a couple of lovers, in fact. Another couple of feet and I would have skewered them. So I took my arrow and silently waded away through the bracken. What happened next? The ample woman and the blackened man, she asleep in his lap, he with a slack white hand, as if saved for something, but too tired now. Light has been stolen by the trees, though it shines on the house and the road. Behind them the watcher, hands in pockets, he knows their game. Only little boy blue is sinuously alive, drawing the string of a homemade bow, ready to take down a bird or even the sun. Another Archie Rhys Griffiths painting, 3 women coming off the slag heaps, each with a heavy bag of small coal. But they have a kind of indomitable feel to them. There's a sort of forward flow of their bodies, echoed by the movement of the sacks. These are women who are going to survive, come what may. These are women who will never give up. And to my mind, they're almost like a chorus in a Greek tragedy. So I've called the poem Aeschylus in Aberdare. Here we go, a Welsh Greek chorus. But whose tragedy are they in? Don't you know? Their own. These mothers, rough and bold, bearing to the terraces below the burden of themselves, not cold. Look at the slag heaps. Look at the sky. These women will defy anything that gets in their way. Unstoppable rage and grief, wearing the colours of the earth, the one with a shawl that might have been used for mopping blood. This beautiful little portrait is also one of my favourites. It's by William Jones Chapman of James Evans. James is, 5 years old, perhaps? He's obviously from a sort of gentry family. He's got a sort of fashionable hat. He's got a horsewhip as a symbol of his class. But the year after this delicate portrait was made, James died, as so many children did in the 18th and 19th centuries. It's almost as if the painter had a premonition, because the background is autumnal. You know, the trees are turning brown and yellow, begins to drop. It's the end of a season, it's the end of a year, just as it proved to be the end of little James's life. In the poem, I make a reference to Dead Sea fruit, which I first came across in Sir John Mandeville's travels from the 14th century. According to Mandeville, if you go to the Dead Sea, there are trees there with marvelous fruit. The skin looks wonderful, and you pluck one down. When you cut it open, it's full of ash. So, such a sunny day. Do you know about Dead Sea fruit? The skin is glossy, but the flesh is ash. After the painter packed up and left, little master cracked his whip. All he could see one day would be his. But next year he died. His parents reached up to harvest the fruit. How tender the skin, how bitter the taste. This painting, as it happens, is behind me. And it's been used, of course, on a lot of the promotional material for the exhibition. But if Edward Owen and I met, I know we would hate each other on sight and sound. He's got that snooty, overbearing look, and he would consider me a son of a small-town trader as an oik. Go around to the tradesman's entrance. So, the poem is called I Say. The peacock of painting, do call him that, he'd be pleased. Not a splash of paint on his blue velvet coat, the necktie supreme, the wig slightly girlish, with that elegantly, carefully twist over the shoulder. Fop, fop! The street boys would cry if they dared. Let them. He has work to do, painting his masterpiece himself. This is by William Roose, New Year's Eve. It's an intriguing painting because if you look at the mantelpiece clock, it says midnight. And the boys here, they've been drinking all evening. And the one on the right certainly got a red face from too much wine. And they're looking to the right of the picture, and they're toasting somebody, but you can't see who it is. Whoever it is off the canvas, or appears to be. And then you've got the maid coming in, looking extremely angry, holding out a stiff arm with that candle. And you wonder, what's going on in this painting? But Peter has discovered that in the alcove there was a previous painting, and it was a painting of a nude woman. And so in my mind, I've made them what they're toasting the nude in the corner there. The lads. Don't look at the midnight chimes of the mantelpiece clock, nor the maid holding out the bright candle of truth on a rigid arm. The wine is good, as is the painted out nude in the alcove, she being their secret, but the disapproving maid has seen. I'm going to skip over that one and come to the last poem in the book, which is also, by chance, one of the last paintings in the exhibition. I think it's the latest painting Peter has from 1984. And that, of course, was at the height of the summer cottage burnings by the group known as Maybe in Glyndŵr, the Sons of Glyndŵr. And in this painting, the cottage is well and truly alight, bright red, orange, yellow flames. And the nice touch is that in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a Union Jack, but the Union Jack isn't painted. It's stuck on as if, this is Wales, this is not the country of the Union Jack. Between 1979 and 92, I think they burned down more than 200 holiday homes, and it certainly had some impact on the attempt to retrieve rural Wales for the Welsh, not to have it overwhelmed by people with much more money coming across the border. So, in some villages in North Wales, they'd be ghost villages during the week, only inhabited by people using it as a nice summer cottage at the weekends. The Welsh in the past, as you know, that we'll all know, sometimes called two-faced, because you can't really trust what they're saying to you. But that's a kind of protective device all peoples use who find themselves up against people with more power than they've got. It's there in that old black American expression, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. And you could say Maybe in Glyndŵr were two-faced, but in a very different, positive way, in that only one person was ever arrested, I think. And so who were Maybe in Glyndŵr? It might be a teacher who teaches your children. It might be a shopkeeper you know well and buy from. It might even be a retired policeman. People who wear a daytime face and go about their business and they look just like you and me. But at night, it's a different scene. They plan and they commit acts of arson in the name of Welsh culture. Well, there's one small quote from T.S. Eliot's Sweeney poems, where Sweeney says, "I gotta use words when I'm talking with you. Isn't it time? Don't be alarmed. We're perfectly tamed, bred to be servants, saying one thing, thinking another. Faces thresholds you never cross, because we don't let you. Gotta use words. But whose words? In Birmingham-on-Sea." Well, thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Diolch eto. Just a few words at the end like this. I have to say, Bwlch Llanberis, the painting over there, having been brought up in Nant Peris, which is right at the bottom of Bwlch Llanberis, I've laughed quite a lot just looking at the road. I can tell you it is not, and it never has been that wide.
One of you comments, the perspective wasn't as...
No, yeah, the people in the carriage were tiny. That looks more like the M25, to be honest. Perhaps for your next project, John, you might go about defining what exactly ekphrastic poetry is.
Oh, I wish I knew.
Yeah, there we are. And with that, to explain what a worthwhile exercise it is, because I'm sure we've all been inspired by your words today. Thank you. So just to say a few thank yous at the end, I would like to thank Daniel and the team for all the work behind putting this on today. Tristan, over there behind the camera. Peter, of course, for this extraordinary exhibition and all the work he's put in on top of that over the past few months. But mostly today, and diolch yn fawr eto, John Barnie. And just to, there are a few copies of the book there. If you would like John to sign them, he will, and then you will have to go downstairs to the shop to pay.